Hi there, I'm Lynn Sorenson. I'm a producer, professional bass player, and violinist and singer and all kinds of different things. You're watching Case for Bass, Greg Weiss and Anthony. Keep watching.
I'm Anthony Gethers.
And I'm Greg Weiss.
And we are the hosts of Case for Bass.
I got a date at the Voodoo Lounge. Welcome to Las Vegas. It's a 24-hour town.
Open the house to rising sun. Celebrate that good hard.
What's happening today, Greg?
Well, today's topic is we have a special guest. This is a longtime Facebook friend, first time meeting him. This is Lynn Sorenson, formerly of Bad Company and other bands. And we want to welcome Lynn, and just want to give a quick shout out to Andrea Hollister for helping us get together on this. She's been a big support of Lynn out there on the West Coast, and they support the Facebook group I have. And Lynn has a very, very, very long resume of playing. First, he plays out close to 7 days a week. I've known that for about 15 years. Bands like Spike and the Impalers, and he produces Ronnie Lee, and there's I believe it's the Heaven and Earth Band, and the Vandals, and he's a big supporter of the local scene. He runs open mics, and we're going to learn more about Lynn, where he's been, where he's at, and where he's going. So I'm going to pass the first question off to Anthony, and we want to give a big welcome to Lynn Sorenson.
Big round of applause to Lynn Sorenson, Bad Company, Vandals, and a bunch of other cool bands. Awesome. All right, Lynn, first and foremost, I know that you mentioned earlier that you play the violin, but did the bass eventually choose you, or did you choose the bass?
Oh, well, obviously you make your own choices in your life. So when I started back when I was a young whippersnapper, just pretty much a little after the American Civil War, I think it was, they wanted you to play music. And now it's not so much like that in the school system. They don't really care anymore. And it's a crying shame, because I could probably go on for 2 or 3 hours on why that should be an education, in every kid's education. But that's another topic. But anyway, they for tone recognition, which one's higher and lower, and I scored really high, so they were after me to play an instrument. And I could always as a kid, I can remember melodies from TV shows that were on for one season 50 or 60 years ago. And I can, I hear a melody once and I can remember it. And I always loved music. My dad was he had all the Rat Pack records. He had all the swing band records, the Dorsey Brothers and Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller and all that. And so in listening to that stuff, I really, learned the aspects of those kinds of music. Swing, for example, is something that's been missing in a lot of music today, and so by listening to that, but I wanted to play an instrument. I went out and heard all kinds of different instruments as a kid there, and And I chose violin because I just liked how it spoke. It was
Wow.
dynamic. It sang. You can change the aspect of a note. You can hold a note forever, and you can change what it's doing in the middle of a note. And with your
Okay.
my parents said, "Well, why don't you, why don't you play trumpet or sax or something? The typical thing."
Mm.
I didn't want to. I wanted to play violin. So, my parents were always supportive. We didn't have a lot of money, but my dad went out and he got a total car. He did this for extra money all the time, straightened it, sold it. We went out, bought me a violin.
Wow.
And so every instrument's as hard to master as any other instrument. I mean, there's a great misconception that because a guitar has 6 strings and most bass guitars only have 4, then a guitar needs to be more difficult. And that's people's absurd idea of things. Well, if you can't play guitar, then you can play bass or whatever that is, right? And I think we all know
In
here
there.
that is one of the largest misconceptions there are in music. And the world's best kazooist is probably every bit as musically talented as the world's best accordion player, as the world's best guitarist, is, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But certain instruments are more difficult to learn
Yes.
than ones. And violin is absolutely one of the most hardest instruments to get to a point where you can even play a song.
Mm.
Technique, you got 4.5 octaves on a fretboard that's that long.
Wow.
And it's no frets. And you get up in the upper range of a violin, a half step is a twist, a roll of your finger. And there's nothing worse than 20 brand new violinists together. They learn how to hold that damn thing, and then you learn how to hold the bow, and then they start screeching and scratching and it's maddening. So my first teacher, Miss Stewart, had she came in my first lesson, and she had these earmuffs on, these furry earmuffs. I'm in 4th grade, mind you, 9 years old. She had these furry earmuffs on. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of odd, I mean, don't she need to hear what's going on? And she was old and been doing it a long time. And then 20 of us are screeching and scratching, and it pretty much, she ended up having a nervous breakdown. I think we were the class.
Really? So your class made your teacher have a nervous breakdown?
I went home that night. Had my violin in my little case, and I went home thinking, this music thing is really freaking hard on people. I mean, this is what happens. You're 9 and you're impressionable. But I went back and they had a violist from the Seattle Symphony Orchestra fill in until they found a permanent teacher. Don Wyan was his name. And he had me doing stuff on my second lesson, had me fingering some scales and vibrato and things. And he says, "Lynn, I need to talk to your parents." And so, long story short, I ended up studying with him privately for 9 years after that.
Wow.
And I was going to be, that was the direction musically I was going to go. I mean, I learned classical music.
Okay.
And so I did, at 17, I auditioned for the Seattle Symphony and got in the finals for that as a violist. I switched over to viola too. I played violin. I switched to viola. I started playing cello too, and upright bass. And
do me a favor. Can you tell our members or audience the difference between the fingering between viola, violin, and cello? The actual difference between the three of them.
Yeah. I mean, a violin violins and except for bass guitar, upright basses are tuned in fourths, but violin, viola, and cellos are tuned in fifths.
Okay.
And so on a violin, your high string is a high E, and then you go to A, and then you go to D, and you go to G. A viola, the high string starts on A, down, and it goes down to a low C. And a cello is a viola, only an octave down. And that is fundamental differences there. So when you're reading music, I could read music at 16, 17, like you could read a book.
Nice.
I mean, you could put music in front of me. Okay. Play from measure 110 to 128. 1, 2, 3, 4, and off to the races I go.
Wow.
And that's what classical music is. You got a symphony orchestra, and everybody has to, you got the music. You don't memorize anything. You read it, and the conductor conducts your feeling, your tempo changes, and all that. He pulls stuff out of the orchestra with his gestures and his or her hands and movements and all that. Okay. And it is learning classical music is technical avant-garde, really is. Sure. But the freedom is pretty close to zero.
Right.
Yeah.
You're told when to play fast. You're told how loud to play, what kind of expression you need, and you got to do it like that. And I wouldn't trade my classical music upbringing for anything in the world, because it gave me my 1,000 hours. I mean, I played all the time.
Wow.
To master those instruments. And I still play violin today. I have an NS violin. It's a 5-string. It goes from the high E to the viola low C. And I've played it. I've never put that thing down in the entire history of my musical career. I have still played violin.
Wow.
I play trios, and I'll grab that sumbitch and I'll just rip on it. I'll run through. I got a Marshall JVM here. I'll run it through my Marshall, or I'll run a direct, or whatever. I can play country on it.
Very crossover.
I still know my classical licks. What happened to me, because I was going to do that. I was going to study. I was going to had some scholarships in college to go study. I was probably more anxious to work. I probably would have went out and tried to get a job at a symphony. Maybe would have went to school. Maybe became a professor. Whatever. Those were my ideas when I was much younger. But I saw the Who in, I believe it was 73, and I saw what the girls did at this concert, and I said, they don't do that when I play violin. They were going crazy. And I'm a young adolescent male, and I'm thinking, my God, this is really something. Plus the vibe and the energy and the freedom, and what a band to see, because they were a rock band that kind of turned things on their head. Really, Townsend was more the bass player, and the soloist, and Moon is going off. So the rhythm section is over here. I'm going off to the races, and the whole thing is turned on its ear. But what really did me was when I saw the original John McLaughlin Mobbish New Fall.
Really? Wow.
Album, and Laird on bass, and I mean, Jan Hammer on keyboards.
Wow.
And Jerry Goodman on electric violin. Jerry Goodman, Benny Goodman's kid.
Yep.
Okay. He had that band, The Flock.
Yes.
And that guy, I mean, Lupani is a great violinist. There's no putting it any two ways, but Jerry Goodman was doing stuff on the violin that I don't think very many people even thought about doing.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, Lupani was carrying over a lot of his classical training and presenting it into the modern world, right? Where Goodman was just crazy. And that concert at the Paramount Theater in Seattle just totally, I went home and going, that's it. I'm not going to be a classical violinist. I pick up a Barkasberry pickup, and I got a little Vox amp, and I put it on the bridge of the violin. I picked up Hot Rats by Frank Zappa, put on Willie the Pimp.
Whoa. Yeah.
Lupani with that blues track.
What a great song.
Lupani with that blues lick down. I mean, that's, other than Copeland, you really didn't mess around in classical music with the blues idea. And so I started doing blues licks, and I started listening to Son House and John Lee Hooker and cats like that, going to the total. I mean, John Lee Hooker playing in, I don't know how the band played with that guy. I mean, he's changing time signatures on the fly. Band just stayed there with him, and then Son House, who kind of hollered in the key of whatever, and Raising the Devil,
life.
And I'm going, what is this? And so I just went to another whole extreme. I played upright bass, and matter of fact, I have one here I'm restoring, but I played, and so I was very aware of the whole idea of what it takes to be a bass player, that the foundation that you're laying. And so after I saw the Who and I realized I was going to make a change, I started playing blues licks on the fiddle. I picked up a Univox bass guitar. Mind you, I'm a teenager, right? And 4-string Univox, and I started just devouring bass players,
destroying it.
Wow.
I started listening to all the guys, everybody, and picking and just learning, because I'm a classical musician, so I read music.
Yep.
And I was playing what somebody wrote, 250 years ago sometimes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm replicating that. So I digested, Paul McCartney and Jack Bruce, John Paul Jones. And I found myself Geezer Butler, the great lick bass
Oh my
player.
God.
I found myself now realizing the bass guitar is a groove axe. So then I began to revert back to my dad's recordings of the swing band days and all those Rat Pack bands in the 50s, the baritone male singers and that kind of thing. And I could now hear what these guys were doing, and then hearing what the 60s and 70s bass players how they were playing, and in devouring with veracity these players when I was 17 years old. I began to develop my own style. I mean, I realized
it's like a middle ground.
Yeah, I wanted to play more. I wanted to be melodic.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I told you, I can remember melodies. You play it once and I'll remember it. If it's cool, I'll remember it forever.
Okay.
I'll play it once and that's it. And so that is in my brain, and so that is how I translate it. So, cats like John Paul Jones, or even McCartney, the melodic, putting the melodic notes, the melodies into your bass playing.
Sure.
Groove, and offsetting with what's going on in keyboard or guitar land or vocal land over here, is where I immediately went to, and I concentrated on that heavily. And
wow.
So then I bought and of course I was then a prog guy. I got into prog heavy duty and
okay. Well, I was going to ask you because you went from classical to the Who, seeing the Who live,
right?
Then would be the introduction to, because the Who is a natural transition into prog rock.
Right. Well,
really
yeah, and I saw McLaughlin, and that was all over for me.
And McLaughlin as well, yes.
That was it. I went, oh wow, why am I in this tube now?
Does it come across as like a distortion of classical? Meaning, like what music is. You're trained on it. You know where all the ins and outs of where composition is, and then this explosive jazz fusion wave comes across. And is it anarchy? Is it what is it?
Well, mind you, I went to the other side. I went to the hardcore blues side for a while, and then I came back.
Yes.
Started putting my other influences together, and then almost a natural progression from classical would be into jazz or prog, right? I mean, where well, not necessarily jazz, but prog, where it's
arranged
and it's like it's technical, and everybody's got.
That's what I'm asking.
That is a natural, and I was into that for quite a while. I mean, well, relatively speaking, and I got Fragile by Yes, and I wore out a couple of copies of that. I mean,
Nice.
Rupert, polyrhythmic, drumming.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Squire, mistakenly thinking that was, and nothing against a Rickenbacker bass owner, but mistakenly thinking that was recorded with a Rickenbacker. I got rid of my Univox bass and picked up my first cool bass because Squire is a Rickenbacker 4001.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
I think I bought it new at the time for $400.
Oh yeah,
and
those are the days.
a lot less than they are now, isn't it? And so I didn't really like the sound of it. You know, I didn't really,
You're not alone.
me
Yeah,
or Rick.
but why was that? Like, what
Well, I
what
think
about the instrument you don't like?
you want to boil down bass players down to, I mean, and this is almost being well, it is, I'm stereotyping, but really
Sure.
fundamentally, particularly in rock music or contemporary music, is you have a P bass lover and you have a jazz bass lover, and they're fundamentally two different ideas. Now there is a shitload of variations of that, and I'm not saying that is word of God, you know, that's
True.
but if you really want to boil all the crap down, you really got that mid-rangey almost, but yet cuts in a lot of mixes, P bass sound, or you got the more low end, high end, a little more even sounding, harder low end sounding jazz bass sound.
Sure.
And that's what I wanted. And of course, then I read that Chris Squire actually recorded a lot of those tracks using a jazz bass, and I went, oh shit, you know. So
well, it was the mystique of the magic that, you know, if you heard everybody recorded with a jazz bass, no one would ever buy a Rickenbacker. And you know, Anthony talks about that, how every studio has its tools that are already set up for the player.
Already there. You walk in with something else, and it's always producer pending for the most part. But I find that when you walk in with something completely exotic, that producer's like, I got a Fender jazz bass or a P bass in the corner over there. Pick one.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting, that's a whole nother interesting topic you just touched on, because I do a lot of producing. I produce bands all the time, and when you're into the mixing side of things, what I'm talking about, the two different bass sounds, becomes much more of the Bible. I mean, it really does. I mean, when you're mixing, like example, I'm mixing. There's a young band I'm doing. It's heavy. They're heavy as can be, and they're called Kapala. They're a local band, and they're kids. They're teenagers, and you know, when you produce a band or mixing a band like that, there is a lot of sound information coming out of the speakers, and so your job is to separate that, and you spend a particularly large amount of time separating the low end of the guitar. I mean, of the drums, like the lower ends of the toms, and of course the kick drum, the bass guitar, and the low end of the guitar.
Yeah, real low guitar now.
Yeah, and so it is a monstrous thing you got to try to do, and when you start talking about the fundamental differences, I find myself grabbing an SVT plugin and trying to make that guitar sound a little more jazzy or a little more, you know, P-bassy sound, because those axes have a way of separating themselves from the muck and the mire. And
excellent approach.
And you know, it is what you end up. Hence why you go to a studio and the guy goes, you bring in some crazy axe and they'll say, hey, look, I got a P bass over here. Right?
Yeah.
I can hear what you're trying to do. Okay. Yep. And that's cool. That's groovy. Great. Go grab that thing over there. It's just
try it out for me.
Let's plug it into this Fender. Let's plug it into this Ampeg. Yeah. You'll love it. I know you will.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Well, it's so funny. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Trying to make their job easier, you know, because they got to get through the session. They got to mix this thing. They got to get it out there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you're a multifaceted dude. You're just not a bass player.
Multifaceted.
You're cellist, violinist, viola, and you went from growing up hearing classical, then you eventually went into blues and prog rock. I'm going to bounce back and forth there, but when did you get into the process of recording, and how did your bass playing, how did your knowledge of a variety of instruments influence your mixing?
Oh, well, I mean, I sing too. I'm a lead singer, and I never took any kind of formal singing training.
Okay.
was just, see, I got out of school, and instead of going to college, I had a Serwin Vega reverse loaded 18 with a 10 in front.
Very, very cool.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah.
And I got a hold. I bought me a 1969 Ampeg SVT, the kind with the I believe the power tubes are 6176 is, I think, is the number on, with the connector on the top of the tube, like a spark plug.
Yes.
Yeah.
It weighs like a zillion pounds. Like you need a chiropractor for that one.
Yeah, but the first year that Ampeg came out with that amp, and I had one of those. So I had that, and I had my Rick still at the time.
Okay.
And I threw that stuff in I had a 1975 black Shorty, no windows.
Oh, wow.
And with a bed in the back and a carpet, carpet.
That's living the dream. Living the dream.
I think about those days now, as at my age, I could put everything I owned in my entire life in that truck.
Wow.
And my God, I was a free man. I mean, I was a free man. And I drove down to the Bay Area, and I was going to go to work because I wanted to get away from here, because everybody's telling me up here, Lynn, you can't abandon your classical music idea. Well, as you grow older, you have to be able to abandon your ideas and try another one.
Wow.
You never can ever be afraid to let go of your idea or have a new one. And so many people get entrenched in, well, I got to be this because I told myself I was going to be that my whole life. Screw that. You change, you get older, you see new things. So I packed up, went down there. I got my last day job, which was I delivered office coffee in downtown San Francisco. That was probably 1970.
Wow. That's not an easy gig.
And at 45 stops a day in 1976 San Francisco, and that I learned more about life with that gig, because kind of bend in society had a little community in San Francisco then. San Francisco had kind of dirt. It was a dirty, romantic little town. Every kind of sexual bend and drug problem was represented with the community there. And so I learned about life. I did. I learned, it was great job until I could work full time. I was working at night, playing in bands and getting 2 hours sleep. But hell, I was 19, 20.
Right.
I could live on 2 hours sleep. I could party all night and get up the next day and not have a hangover. I mean, not so much now, but certainly back then it was a crazy time. And then I started playing all the time. And I realized that if I was going to be worth money, I needed to sing. And so I just started singing. I just started, singing and singing and playing bass.
Well, can I interject? Greg and I, we interviewed Billy Sheehan, and that was a big thing that he spoke about, was being able to have the ability to sing. And he admitted, he says, "Look, I'm not the best singer in the world, but he sings, so that makes a big difference in the playing. That makes you a better overall musician, or a more complete musician." You
simply were two people now. You're to replace you now takes two people, and I sing lead and play bass, and that is a difficult thing to master, because invariably bass, and particularly if you're going to be a melodic style bass player, like McCartney singing and playing a bass is amazing, and Greg Lake playing and singing bass is an amazing thing, because what this is doing is invariably going to be completely different than what's coming out of your mouth. And you have to completely divorce yourself from unifying. You got to separate yourself completely. And I only like playing with really great drummers, because when I'm playing with a really drummer that grooves like me, he's got that same kind of pocket feel that I love. I don't have to think about this anymore. And this just becomes automatic. I always know that I'm playing with not a very accomplished drummer when I suddenly have to stop thinking about singing. I got to look.
Greg can add on to that.
That's
Greg,
my.
I could do my 2.5 hours show about ignoring my drummer, and not worrying about what's behind me isn't important. And it from talking to a lot of bass players, there's a lot of different points of view. And Anthony, if Anthony was in my band, I couldn't ask him to sub for a gig because he would hear my drummer warm up and go home. And
I wouldn't literally leave. He's absolutely correct. And look out.
I've had to stick to the relationship with my guitar player friend to stay in the band in our trio, because I growing up in the area, I've heard, witnessed, and played with some of the hottest drummers that could ever hit. And I've had to make compromises in order to stay on stage. And we at this point, we don't talk. He don't bond. He don't listen. He don't, and I yelled at him 2 nights ago, and I'm like, you don't understand. We have to play together. You can't play unless I'm on stage, or else our bond is broke.
Oh, of course.
But I just want to get back to Lynn and his lead singing. The first time I saw Lynn on video sing, it was at the NAMM stage, and he seems to end up in a very prominent spot, because he ends up surrounding himself at the I used to be the NAMM stage. I don't know if they still have it like that, but
not like that. That was a pretty big production, yeah.
But it was it's always great to see players you follow end up in stronger positions of notoriety, and Lynn's definitely one for them. At the time, I mean, this had to be going back 10 years, a little more. It was when they were banning smoking everywhere, and the running joke was your best connections were out at the dumpster outside of you're laughing because it's probably true.
This is true.
Was that your best connections at NAMM were hanging out at the dumpster? You didn't have to make it in the show. That's where all the smokers were. And how are you going to have heavy metal and rock and roll without smoking? And I don't know if you have any dumpster stories from NAMM, but they'd sure be appreciated.
Well, I used to go to NAMM all the time. I mean, NAMM in the 90s was insane. In the 90s and the early, even probably up to the early aughts, but started kind of mellowing out in the late 90s, and then of course the people that are in charge of that decided at some point in time to run the musicians out, not realizing that was, if you wanted to see Paul Stanley walk down the aisle with on a Saturday at NAMM with 2 girls with painted on lime and orange dresses, look like they're spray painted on.
That was the place. That
was the place to go. Whatever rock star you wanted to meet, whatever player you wanted to talk to, they were going to be there. And that was the whole point. It was like there was a symbiotic relationship between the people making the products and the guys and girls using them. And for some reason, I don't know what committee made these decisions, and they're trying to get back to those days, and good luck to them, because once you destroy that, it's going to be hard to bring it back. But you could. I remember one time being, and I love this kind of stuff. I mean, humility is something you need as a musician. It's really easy.
Yes, very true.
To think that you're the shit, and you're not, and you can never stop learning anything new. I'm a better player today than I was 24 hours ago.
Really?
It might be this much, but I am. And I learn things. Everything I do musically, whether it's producing, mixing, mastering, playing whatever instrument, I learn writing. I learn something every day when I do it. And I never think of myself as being, so good that, if you start believing in your own bullshit, you stop getting better. And you look around and you see these people that were down here, and all of a sudden the time goes by and you're down here now and you're looking up at this guy going, what the hell happened? And
I learned that, sorry to interrupt you, I learned that I went to the Victor Wooten Bass Camp. I learned that within the first 5 minutes of everyone getting their instruments out, you have to do a 60-second introduction You have to say who you are, where you're from, and you have to play for 60 seconds. And there were some guys who were smoking, and there was one guy I'll never forget him, German guy. He said, "I'm going to give you 60 seconds of silence." Didn't even have an instrument on stage. And then fast forward to the Saturday performance, he was so awesome on the bass, and his humility was, "I'm not going to play for you. I'll play for you the day of our party day." And just the fact that he went 60 seconds in and just kind of went, he says, "I'm going to give you a 440 for 60 seconds."
Oh my
And you're
God.
like, wow, that was his approach. And then come Saturday, he tore that instrument up. He set it on fire. Even Victor was like surprised.
Right.
So you just don't know. You
Well,
really don't know.
I love that kind of stuff. I mean, I was like this at the NAMM show. This is probably 90, I don't know, in the 90s somewhere, probably mid 90s. And I at the Yamaha booth, and there's this thing. I hear some noise going on, so I go behind the booth and into this little room, and there's probably 15 of us, and there's Mike Stern and Petitucci on bass, and some drummer from Oklahoma on brushes. And when you see these guys, you see guys like that playing, and you realize, you know what? I don't know a damn thing. I don't know anything. I better get back to work.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of stuff. I was what was it? It was Paul Rodgers. Paul Rodgers is huge in Japan. I mean, I'll be in Paul Rodgers' solo band and be in the States, and you're a musician. I'd be at the airport or whatever. You're a musician. Who do you play for? I play for Paul Rodgers, and people go, isn't that guy with the little train show on Channel 9? Mr. Rodgers. Wrong guy.
Paul Rodgers.
I mean, but you go anywhere else in the world, everybody immediately knew who he was. And I mean, people, me in Japan, want my autograph because they recognize it's me playing with him.
Wow.
And it's a whole other world. But long story longer, we were doing an Udo Fest there, and Paul, we were actually co-headlining with Kiss, believe it or not, in Japan, which is unfathomable anywhere else in the planet Earth. That would never occur. But so, and I think Alice in Chains was before us, is what it was. But between us and Kiss was Steve Vai and McAlpine and Sheehan down.
Oh wow!
That's the show.
That was was that in the 80s or 90s?
This was probably I want to say 08.
Okay, 2008.
Oh, wow.
I ran down there and watched that show. Because again, you see that. But you know what? I don't really know anything. I played Wembley with Bad Company. Pretty major thing. And it was filmed. We had 15 cameras. You sit back and you're backstage, and I just get my day out of my head. A lot of guys are running around nervous and shit. I just sit back, drain my brain, because I know today I don't fuck up because I'm on camera, for crying out loud. I'm not screwing up. And so I do that show, and I'm kind of thinking that I got a 40-foot dick. Look what I just did. Look what I just did. I played there.
It's something I love to watch, and what I love about it is.
Wait, great.
I
want you to continue the story. Go ahead.
Flew back home.
Okay.
Got on the jet, and I'm thinking, I'm just, my God, look how cool am I. I flew back. I got in my truck. I drove out to a little town in eastern Washington called Wilbur. And a friend of mine had a gig, and this is a little one-horse wheat farm town. And I got into a hotel and I slept on a bed that was a foot too short for me. I got up, opened the door. There's a dry swimming pool with a little building by it with a mural of a cowboy kissing a horse on the mouth. I go in and I play a little street dance for my friend for about 25 people in Wilbur, Washington. I went from Wembley to Wilbur, and I realized that the universe is telling me, Lynn, you're just never going to ever be that guy. Maybe when you're dead, but if you keep getting better, you never know what's going to happen. Wow. You got to keep getting better.
That's awesome.
Better every day. Just when you think you're the shit, something's going to happen. You say, hey, oh, boy, you watch your ass.
That's a great story. Just the way you said that. Because, yeah. While you're talking about that, explain the Paul Rodgers Bad Company connection. How did you get involved with them?
Well, this was 1999, I think it was, and Paul, a drummer, friend of mine, Jeff Cathan, was drumming for Paul's solo band. It was Howard Leese and Jeff Cathan and a guy named J-Man on bass guitar. And the bass guitarist wanted the weekend off. Now, you get in a band like that, you don't want to take the weekend off because you never know what's.
No, we know that story.
And so Jeff said, hey, look, I know this guy, and I was doing a record with Randy Hansen up here at the time. And so a couple of suits came out and saw me play and said, yeah, okay, yeah, you can fill in. And so I got a work tape of previous gig. And not to sound arrogant here, but I could tell that I would be a better bass player for him than the guy. Okay. And nothing against the guy. The guy is actually a very good player, and so I don't want to even in any way ridicule him. But I could tell that I could. But the big thing is that I sing, and I didn't hear anybody singing for shit on this tape. I heard Paul Rodgers sing, and I heard a couple of guys trying to sing, but I didn't hear anybody doing the gig. All right, that like deserved to be. And so I smelled blood on the job. So I took the tape. I spent a week on it. I flew down to Vegas, and it was I think the Silver Park Bowl. We were like 3 back from Sammy Hagar.
Oh wow!
It was a shitload of people out there. There's, I don't know. I mean, 20, 30,000 people, maybe. I don't know. A lot of people, girls with no tops on, their knockers hanging out, on the front, on guys' shoulders, and outdoor show. So I'm, and that was cool. But again, you get an opportunity in this business, and it is luck. But after you get that lucky break, you have to earn it. That's a common misperception among people out here, which is lucky. Well, your breaks are lucky. But your what you do after
seize
that
the opportunity.
Yes.
So I smell blood on the job, and so I got up on the gig, and I looked out, and there was delay towers going all the way back. This is a real show. I played bass, and there's just this, you feel
everything.
Big show like that. But I kept my cool, and I think it was Feel Like Making Love, and I'm doing the song for the first time with Paul. And I walk up to the mic, and I mean, Howard, I think, was walking up to the mic like he was going to sing, but I just walked right up there, stuck my lips in this thing, and I sang the third above Paul like I owned it.
Wow.
And
right.
Paul.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
I remember, I'll never forget this. And I'm thinking, wow, there's all these people out here. It's so cool. But I'm thinking, that ain't cool. I just sang
over
above this guy,
a third above the lead singer.
Paul Rodgers, that is cool. Way cooler than the thousands of people we were playing for. That I kind of found myself going, God, that was really.
How did he react to that when you did that?
Paul turned around, and he looked at me, and he kind of gave me this little nod like that, and find out later that that's Paul's version of a bear hug. And so I got the gig. They ended up canning the guy and hiring me, and got the job. So off to the races that was. But
so it sounds like all your training and your vocal capacity of being a lead singer, being a bass player who also sings lead, and you have all this killer background, it all came to a head, and it worked out in your favor by you having all these skills. And then you have a bass player, as you noticed, that you said you knew that in your heart you were better than he was, and that he could fit into the band.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not from a point of arrogance. You got to also have confidence in this business, and you can't be too humble either, because if you got too much humility, then you don't have necessarily the confidence it's going to take.
You're not attacking
and knock the ball out. You know, you got to visualize yourself getting that gig. I mean, I did. I literally visualized, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to steal this job. Wow, that's what I'm going to do. And so you always got to walk that fine line between confidence and arrogance. You know,
you think that the familiarity with the material
you got to know how good you are and where you are not good, the things you need improvement on. Sure. People filling your head with bullshit up here doesn't get to you, and people that are jealous of you down here trying to uproot you, that doesn't affect you either, because you know exactly where you are.
You almost got to be zen about it. It sounds like
you can ride this business with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yin
and the yang. Wow.
Having that familiarity. I mean, it's like popular music when you're playing at Wembley and the crowd is overwhelmingly knowledgeable of all these songs. That's got to be a tremendously elevating feeling.
Well, it is. I mean, when you get, and of course, I didn't write any of the songs. I was just
I understand that. But
it really is when you're playing and all these people are getting into it. It's a real
lift.
What ultimately is going to make me play until the day I die is the fact that there's not a higher feeling than, because music is about a feeling. I mean, music technically is just frequencies and timing. It's mathematics. And you want to just be a musician, you can learn the math.
Sure.
And you can become an adequate player. You can play this song and that song and the other song, and you can get in a band and you can do this and do that and do this and the other thing. But if you want to become an artist, you got to learn how to take that math and make people feel something with it. And that's when you start throwing away all this idea that I got to play like the record or I got to play this note perfectly. When you're talking about emotions, it's never right. There's never perfection in that. The point is that you got to make people feel something. And when I don't care if I'm playing in front of 100,000 people or 100 people or 10 people, if I'm playing and those people are understanding and feeling what I'm feeling, it's the best drug in the world. And I love trios because when that happens, and I got a guitar player over here and a drummer, and we are not even talking, because my trios and things are not structured acts. We off the reservation. You go see me play, and anyone on my number of trios, you see him one night and you come back the next night and see me play. It'll be a different show. It'll be different. It'll be completely different. The playing is different because I like playing with cats where we just communicate. We're not talking, but we're in our head in the same pool, and we're seeing what each other are doing, and we're going places together instantly.
You guys reached your dharma on stage. You reached your dharma.
Well, I'm going to say I've adopted this from Lynn,
such a high.
and regardless if I have a drummer or not, I'm still going to freeform it. I'm still going to play what's in my head and in my heart. And I see how he does it. I've seen these clips of how he's really letting it loose. And as Anthony would say, we call it digging deep. And you're definitely a digging deep guy. And it's one of the things that I appreciate about, your performance levels and your intensity, because there's no gap between reality and what you're doing when you're doing it, if that makes sense.
Yes. I also want to ask you about because it's funny because I'm so stuck in your singing and your bass playing, the singing bass playing combo. Do you have any bass player vocalists that you model yourself after?
Well, the problem with singing is, you're kind of born with this whole trip. And I don't, there's cats that can sound like people and they're amazing. They can emulate singers. I've never
like mimics
ever. I mean, just because of what I'm born with, I've never really been able to do that. It became very difficult for me to try to authenticate another singer. So then I quickly abandoned that idea, and I just, started doing what I could do. I was on the road in back in the 80s, late 70s and into the mid 80s. There was a road circuit. You could just, I was just on the road weeks and weeks and weeks for years. And we had 3.5 tons of gear in a truck. We had, 60 can light shows and this huge PA and a big truck. And we just went around, played for a week or 2 weeks at a time in towns all over Canada and the US. And it was where I cut my chops, but I sang then. I was the lead singer then. I never knew how to sing. And I was singing constantly on probably 60% of my voice.
Wow.
And because, I'm working 6 nights a week, the 7th night you're traveling, and did that for years. And again, it's where I really cut my style. I learned to sing with style, with me. I just sing the way I would sing. And then I got off the road and started playing. I moved back up here and started playing locally up here. And I got a hold of what's the cat's name? God, I can't remember it right now, but the Broadway, he's dead now, but the Broadway instructor, singer, taught singers how to sing. God, I can't remember his name now. His name is escaping me.
Lee Strasberg.
No, not him.
He was in The Godfather.
But anyway, he had a video cassette video course on how to be a Broadway singer and how to do everything right.
Sondheim.
Breathing, all the and the coolest thing it taught me is how to do what I was doing here, but doing it down here.
Okay.
All the power and letting this thing relax, not tense up, and just use the larynx to get the notes, but have all the pressure from your diaphragm. And the coolest thing besides that was the head voice. He taught head voice. And I have a really good ability, born with it, to have a really hard head voice.
Okay.
It's falsetto and sounds like a full voice.
Well, do me a favor. Explain to the viewer what is a head voice.
Well, your voice is resonating. You has it resonating back in the top of your mouth, not in your nose, but in the cavity up here, instead of coming from your throat or your chest. And you have you use air to it's like when you're singing falsetto, the note resonates in the top of your mouth more, but you create it so it's more of a hard sounding falsetto. And some people, it never really sounds that way. It's just, again, it depends on what you're born with, and I was able to get a really hard falsetto out of that. And I learned to transition from this, and I taught myself that with this book and audio examples of how to do it. And I added a octave and a half to my voice, just like that.
Wow. That's impressive.
How to sing and not blow my throat out. Now, this is the winter. Well, we're coming off the winter, and winter is always a time when you're singing and you're dealing with compromises in your throat. But that's just the nature of the beast. But and so that I took time off the road and learned how to sing right. After singing for years wrong.
But it's everything. I mean, you're building your toolbox and you find out that there's a whole arsenal that you developed without worrying about it after you were done with it.
The greatest singers are some of the worst singers out there. I mean, Willie Nelson sings his way out of a bag, but I believe every word he's singing. Eddie Vedder is a terrible singer, but you believe every word he's singing. Frank Sinatra, I say this all the time, Frank Sinatra sang purposely flat for the last 3/4 of his career. All right. And I don't know about you, but it didn't bother me at all.
Right. No, I like this voice. It didn't matter.
I said that about Diana Ross too.
when you
and
produce
some Motown singers.
I learned this from several great producers, but when you are tracking a singer, you the right track is almost never the correct track. It's got flaws in it, but it makes you believe everything the singer's talking about. And whenever I produce a vocalist, I say, look, I'm not going to tell you how to sing something. I'm not going to tell you what to sing. What I am going to tell you is when I don't believe a damn thing you're telling me. I don't believe what you're singing about. We got a problem, and you better go back to work.
Wow.
I got to believe what you're singing to me. I don't care how great your notes are, how in tune they are, your technique and all this shit. I don't care about any of that. So
Nice.
the great tracks are never the right ones. Hardly ever.
So you're about sincerity in the vocal.
Oh, yeah.
So the sincerity. So it's so funny that you mentioned that. A friend of mine played guitar for Bill Withers, and this is non sequitur, but this is also they were working on "Use Me," and I guess Bill Withers walked into rehearsal, and they were playing extra notes, and Bill Withers sat there for a few minutes and didn't get on the vocals. He finally stops the band. He goes, "What the F are you doing?" And he goes, "What do you mean? We're playing Use Me." No. And then he sits on the piano. He goes, "This is the riff." Do, 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 do. And they did the other part. Do, 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 do. He said, I'm going to sit in the corner. You guys are going to practice that. If you're going to do something in the song, make sure you're saying something. If you're going to do something extra, make sure you're saying something. And then he sat in the corner for about a half hour while they rehearsed that riff. And then he got up and he started singing. So it's, again, apropos to what you're talking about.
You can't argue with that hook now, can you? I wonder how many records that's. Good Lord, man.
And how many versions and how many languages and
the greatest songs have been some of the most simplest things.
Exactly.
And I don't think there's a formula to that. It's just if it was so easy, we'd all be doing it, wouldn't we?
Sure.
Well, a lot of people try, but they don't necessarily connect.
Absolutely. Think about it. I remember someone. This is when I met Stanley Clarke years ago, because he was always talking about Miles Davis.
Another one of my mentors. Oh my God, yes,
love him. And he would say, we were talking about being do you want to be the greatest bass player in the world, or would you want to be the greatest songwriter and be a mediocre player?
Songwriter.
And at the time, I said bass player. He goes, no, songwriter. He was the one that said to me, the most popular answer in the world, the most popular song in the world is, he goes, take a guess. And I'm trying to go through all Elvis and Michael Jackson. He goes, no, Anthony, Happy Birthday.
Happy Birthday.
It's the most popular song in the world. It is the same cadence, no matter what language you're talking about. It's the same language. It's the same cadence. I mean, different languages, but same cadence. Everything is happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Da-da-da. Happy birthday to you. He goes, if the guy who created that song was smart enough and he did a copyright, his estate would be he'd be so rich on the publishing.
It is in songwriting. It's still to this day, even though people don't buy records, it's still songwriting. I mean,
it is. Well, think about it. Without the songs, you have nothing. It doesn't matter how good of a player you are. It's the same thing. I work in film. I work in video. The director has no job, doesn't have a job without a script writer. You got to write the script. Without the script, there's nothing.
Yep.
Same thing with performing tunes. There's nothing as a songwriter goes. Do you have any basses nearby that you were willing to show?
This is the next part of the show. If you could
pull out
one or two, three tools of your trade.
Not yet. Greg has to do a formal introduction. All right, Greg. Right. What's happening next?
Okay, this is the part of the show that while bass players, we seek a common goal in putting out groove and tone, we all have different tools of the way to do it. And we're going to ask Lynn if he has something close by. I've been watching him, and I know he's got some serious gear, including an 8-string bass that you'll always see him in pictures playing this thing masterfully. And what you got for us, Lynn?
Well, let's show that one. I mean, I don't have, there's a lot of bass players that have 30 bass guitars or 12 or 96 or, I don't have that. I don't, if I don't like a bass, I don't play it. I don't. I only have basses that give me certain sounds that I want. And so, and I've become very picky about that. But yeah, I'll show this bass right now. That H string you're talking about. This is an Ibanez.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And it's as heavy as probably a small block Chevy 350.
I used to have one of those, not the A string, but I had the four string version of that.
Oh yeah. Well, this
heavy as hell.
Sting played. He had an A string, and I believe he had a 4 too. Musician.
Yep. That's why I bought it, because of Sting. I literally saw Sting play it, and I wanted it for that reason alone. It's
an alembic copy. It's got the alembic style bridge and the nut down here.
Yep.
And it's a wire-to-wire alembic. Now, alembic was $2,500 at the time in '82, and this is $400, I think, just like my own.
What put you into the 8-string mode?
Well, I mean, I just I had a fretless. I had a Spectre fretless 4 that got stolen, so I wanted something new. So I got this, and of course, you got to play it with a pick. You can't really, you can't play it with your fingers. And I used it for quite a while, and then I put it away. And probably 4 years ago, I saw it sitting in my closet, and I went, you know what? What the hell am I doing with that thing in the closet? So I pulled it out. I had to restore it a bit. I had to get a nut cut, and and because you can't get an 8-string nut, and put that on and put the machine heads back on, and I fired it up, and every time I play it, it's great because it just rattles, and you just it's like almost in a trio. It's really cool because it's like there's another guitar player back there somewhere.
Exactly.
With you.
Exactly. We've been talking to a bunch of 12-stringers lately too.
Oh,
and they take that into their own, universe, covering all the parts. And Doug Pinnick loves his. We got a friend, Tony Senatori, who put out a DVD on it, and there's a lot of expression going on that just covers, instead of just that bass tone, that you're really covering the full range on it.
That's true. I played the Hamer 12s, and of course they're a real pain in the ass to tune. You get that middle octave string, it's almost like you need a pair of tweezers to play it. But this thing, in my opinion, rattles every as good as a Hamer 12. I mean, it's just an amazing sound. It's back when Ibanez was spending all their time copying axes until they got, I believe they got sued. Now, this is one of my favorite axes. Well, they're all my favorites. I love this fretless. I love this 5-string Zahn.
Oh my God! Zahn.
And
nice.
Very nice. Very nice.
Love this thing. I've had it for years. I got in. They gave me this bass when I got with Paul, and I just fretless, because it takes me back to my classical music days, and there's different.
That's gorgeous. Wow.
Thing about
it's playing a nice size neck too.
Fretless bass that is it's more expressive. I mean, you can really do some crazy things with it, and I have the action set really low on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't muscle an axe like this. You got to kind of finesse it.
Yeah.
And you got to hear it. You got to really hear it. You got to hear what you want to do, but you can just bend so out of the keys here and there. I mean, I'm a big Tony Franklin fan.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I love watching that guy.
With Carmine on drums and him.
Oh, Blue Murder.
Rock star singers and the rock star guitar players. I don't know about you, but I didn't give a shit about who was singing, who was playing guitar, because those two put on a rhythm
master show.
Yes.
Yeah.
That record, every bass player needs to pick that up and listen to it. Because
I agree.
Yeah. And but I'm just a big and
what kind of strings do you use?
I played all those firm songs of Paul and stuff too with this thing. But
nice.
Story about this axe is it got stolen in
wait. You said it got stolen, but it's still there.
Well, yes. Now you know how the story goes. You get an axe stolen, you generally don't ever see it again.
Exactly.
This got taken. It was at a Spike and Impala show in Ocean Shores, No, in Aberdeen, home of Nirvana, Aberdeen, Washington. And a guy, because I had my other axes in my rig, the guy wanted this axe. He left all my other stuff in my car and took this thing.
Wow.
And so I just broke my heart. It was Sunday, and I go, oh my God, my favorite, another fretless gone. And this was my favorite axe in the world. And this cop calls me on Tuesday. Says, Lynn, we got your bass guitar. And a radio station had picked it up, a local radio station. He was a fan of mine. He started broadcasting. Lynn Sorenson got his bass stolen. The newspapers picked up the story. The AP picked it up. It actually went all the way back to probably page 936 in the New York Times, but it got in there. Wow. Bass player from Bad Company has bass stolen. Wow. I think if one of my kids died, nobody would have given a shit. But by God, somebody stole my bass. It's
your bass. They care about it.
Put a little ditty on that. So anyway, the guy that stole it, some guy hated him, and he ratted him out, and they got my axe back. So,
God bless that guy who hated him.
Well, you know,
great.
Having a Facebook group like that, when something happens, there are major alerts that go out. And you never know who sees it. You never know, and people get their instruments back.
Wow! Yes. Look at that. Show that one. That one.
Where's the body?
Look at the neck of that one.
This is you'll see me at Wembley playing this.
That's the one.
Okay, gorgeous. And
this PJ Rubel came up to me when I got in Bad Company, and I got approached by all kinds of vendors, to get endorsed by their stuff. I didn't like it. I didn't do it. I just didn't do it. But Pete's a great cat. He came in. We played Woodstock out there
in Bethel. Yeah, that's where I live.
Yep. Arena up there with Bad Company.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the other side of the site.
And he came. I think they're out of Woodstock. The inspector was. Yeah.
That's the other Woodstock.
He came and saw me. He says, Lynn, I want to endorse you. He says, all I want is a couple of laminates, and I'll give you some bass guitars. So he this is actually my favorite one. And I mean, we can get into a discussion about, like the fretless is a 5-string. I got another Zahn fretted here that I bought back in the mid '90s from Joe Zahn. He gave me the fretless, but that one I bought. And but that's a 5-string too. But there's something about a 4-string, and I've heard some guys tell me that they think it's the amount of body and neck per string.
I agree.
Ratio there, but something about the low end and of this bass guitar, and it is got great mid and it's got great high. And the more you beat on it, the better it sounds. I mean,
really?
I got really high on this thing.
Whoa.
And I play it.
Oh, yeah.
I play this very aggressively. I'm hammering it, and I go all over the place on it. And the more I hammer it, the better it sounds. And you're in a big rock band. I mean, like on his Bad Company, they love this axe because they didn't have to do shit to it. They just basically ran it flat. And it gets cuts through everything. And then I picked up I always want to put the original HasLab preamp in these things. They got a thing called the tone pump, and it's not bad, but HasLab makes it sound like an NS2. The Phil Spector. I mean, not Phil, but Spectre NS2. And so you can never find them. They're like, they come online. They're, anywhere from $400 to $800 for one. And they're literally gone in minutes. I found a cat.
You guys are very loyal.
I found a cat out of South Carolina that made the HasLab preamp. He got a hold of all the old op amps that distort. They're not efficient, and they got that distortion, those even harmonic distortions in them. And all the old retro things, and he made a HasLab, and I put this thing in it, and I love it because it almost gives you two basses. You can play it real soft and it gets clean, and then you lean on it and it just grunts on you. It just burn. It just, it's not clean. It's nasty, and I love that tone too. And so you can see, I mean, those are three basses, and they all do completely different things.
Absolutely.
Lynn, if I can ask, what strings do you prefer?
I'm well, I like stainless steel round wound strings, and it doesn't really matter so much to me.
I gotcha.
I'm really
Other
not.
People have lots of preference in that, and we always like to hear.
I use flat wounds on my fretless, of course.
Right.
Because that has that kind of sound to it. But I use them all. I mean, generally speaking, I'll go with Ernie Balls.
Gotcha.
Okay. Got it.
There, love it.
Okay.
We always ask. Oh, and amplification.
Yes. What kind of amp are you using?
That's an interesting topic. I like I said, I was an SVT guy, and forever. I mean, I had that 69, and then I got rid of it, and I wish I hadn't. But it was like owning an old Harley. You have to drive for an hour.
Yep, exactly.
But
what do you have behind you? I'm looking behind you. Is something?
I mean, I became a TC electronic guy.
There you go.
I had an Ampeg SVT2, the original St. Louis Music. They just basically took the SVT, stuck it in a rack.
Right.
Tried to re-engineer it, turn it the SVT Pro, not anywhere near as good a sounding amp. Put more bells and whistles on it. The bells and whistles could just go out the door. That original SVT2, but it was still 100-pound amp. And to retube it, you got to take out a mortgage on your house.
Wow.
And they really find the tubes today.
Yeah, I mean, the Ampegs are made for GE tubes, and you can't find a GE tube anywhere anymore. I mean, shit. So, so I wanted to go something lighter, and a friend of mine that ran a bass shop up here gave me a call and says, "Lynn, I want you to come down and take a look at this TC Electronic." And so I grabbed it, and I liked it, and I got a hold of them, and I was playing with Bad Company at the time. So they said, "Well, how many do you want?" And well, give me a couple. And again, the front of house guys love this thing because it has a one knob multi-band compressor that just takes the neck and takes out any dead spots. You get on a huge line array PA, and you can really hear low end dead spots in a bass guitar. And, my fretless doesn't really have any, but any kind of dead space, it'll just kind of, without leaning on the low end of your bass guitar and driving a compressor, it'll more of a smooth multi-band thing.
That's cool.
And between that and the Transformer DI, they wanted me to have at least two, so they used it as the DI going back to the front of house. They loved it. And so I got the TC. I got this is a use in my studio. I got a 750 I take out live. It's got more power, and I have a couple of these. These are TC 10s. I'm a 10-inch guy.
Yeah.
Speakers. I don't really like 12s, and I don't care for 15s at all.
Now, why do you not like 12s? Is it
because 10s have the punch that you want, but the thing of it is I don't like a ported bass cabinet. I'm not a ported guy. I'm a sealed cabinet guy. Maybe it's my old SVT days, but you get a ported cabinet, and it's particularly ports in the back, and you get in a room, and you got to move that damn cabinet around because all the low end.
It gets
the reason why they're ported is because that's how they're getting their low end, and how they're selling it to all these bass players. But the low end's coming out and reflects against the wall, so the sound of your cabinet changes dramatically to rooms you play in, unless you're playing in a huge stadium where you got no wall, And then I find when it's ported, you lose the punch of the axe. I want when I play a note, I want to hear it go at me. I don't want that to go boom. I want to hear it go boom. I want to hit that thing, and I want it to have an impact.
Oh, I hear you. I mean,
And so what I did is these cabinets were ported in the back. They got a port about this big, and I immediately took. I got some high-end plywood, and I cut an exact circle. I took that port out and I glued it in there, and I sealed.
Oh, wow. So
this is a sealed cabinet. The worst place to put a port, in my opinion, with any bass cabinet is in the rear, because then you're going to be completely affected by where you are on a wall. And so you find yourself moving your cabin around to get the sound you want. And I simply don't have the time for that shit. I want
Anthony.
to
He just gave me a poof movement.
I see.
This right here. I just want to hear those 10s, and these are cool because they're Eminence betas, and this top one has a 1-inch high-end driver in it, coax. So this is a coax, and so you get a good amount of rattle out of it too. And,
nice.
And I've even lately tried just about every smaller bass amp out there, and I got tens of thousands of hours on these heads, and I just love them. And I can make them sound the way I want. I did add that little Ampeg SGT pre DI.
Yeah.
I like doing that to different things too, because I can get, kind of get a lot of that Ampeg front end tone,
Awesome.
Sometimes when I want that.
Awesome.
It particularly marries well with this bass guitar.
Oh, I believe it. It looks awesome.
Ampeg rattle out of it, and I just,
Oh, it's classic.
First and foremost, thank you very much for showing us the trio, because you have these great instruments.
And thanks for opening up about a lot of things.
Yep, absolutely. And last question to you is this: what would you tell someone? So you're not just a bass player; you're a multifaceted musician. So and producer and vocalist. So what would you say to someone who wants to kind of be in your position at some point in their life? What advice would you give them?
You got to want this more than anything you've wanted. You have to, if you have doubts about what you want, then go find something else to do, because this business can be very rewarding, but it can also, as you both know, be very cruel at the same time. And it has talk about a yin and yang in this business. And it's important that you know who you are. The most important life thing I would give anybody is just to know who in the hell you are and what you're good at doing, and hold on to that with everything you got. And that works with anything in life, let alone music. And don't ever let go of what you dream. I've dreamt my whole life, and I'll never stop until I'm dead. And hopefully when I'm dead, I can still dream too. So
Lynn Sorenson.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. You gave that's awe-inspiring, and it's funny because if you don't enjoy it, then why do it? That's the thing. You have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you for being on with us, man. Greg, thank you for setting this up. I know Greg's been chasing you around for a while.
If there's a statistic on how many single likes you can give Lynn, if he's put 10,000 hours into his amps, I've put 10,000 likes into him.
There it is. All right, awesome. Thank you, Lynn, very much.
I need you.